Back with another Legion TD2 fighter tier list. We've done a few in the past and we are doing one again. They just came out with a huge patch for this new year recently, and I've been playing with it a little bit, so I think I've played enough with this new patch and the new unit as well that we can go ahead and make a new tier list for this year starting. I'm not going to talk too much about the fighters that aren't here. Pretty much anybody that has came into the game or been added is not here, obviously. So it's kind of hard to explain all of them at this point because now there's just so many that I would definitely probably miss some. But what you see me doing here is putting the Tier 1 fighters down here. Now, some of you in a previous video have said, oh, how can you put Skeleton in D tier? Well, because it's the Bone Warrior itself, sorry, not Skeleton. And obviously their upgraded versions will not be in D tier because that's not where they belong. But yes, the regular Tier 1 versions of all the fighters deserve to be in D tier because of the list I'm making. Because they're Tier 1 fighters and they're not good. But their upgraded versions sometimes are great. So, I probably missed a few, but now we can kind of deep dive into this actually. Let me know what you guys think of where I place some of the fighters, where you guys would place some of them, how you guys are liking the game, the patch, and yeah, check out some of my other Legion TD2 content, obviously. We will start with my man, the Butcher. I gotta just give him the nod into S, honestly. We're just gonna start off with the S tier unit, really. I think his aura, being able to give lifesteal to 6 other units, is arguably the best aura in the game. He's definitely a decent start as well for newer players, being able to start him and push 2 workers instantly, because no matter what, he's going to clear wave 1 and more than likely wave 2 as well, depending on what they send. But again, that 6 unit lifesteal plus himself obviously is definitely insane value for $150, and can definitely make a team very scary and very buildable around. So we're going to go ahead and give Head Chef, which is his upgraded version, S tier as well, obviously, because it's just a better version of him, more health, all around, more damage. Now, some people are going to hate me, probably already to start, turn off the video, but Boar is trash, okay? I've had that man so many times, tried to make him work with all sorts of builds and where I place him, and he just doesn't, okay? I had that man in the furthest back line, ran all the way up, gaining full speed, full mana, all of it, and he didn't even kill a snail, okay? I know that it's AoE damage around it, but you would think a tier 6 unit would kill the very first mercenary with full stack, essentially. Did not. So unimpressed still, and yeah, there's plenty of other tier 6 units that are better. I have to put the egg in C just because it's so inconsistent and so honestly scary to, I guess, use or get right. But it can definitely have some value if you can pull it off. Harpy is still arguably the worst tier 2 unit in the game, just not good. So she definitely just has to stay here. Sky Queen, I will give B. I think she's very, very solid, especially with some steeds or something to just make her even better. But I would say Sky Queen is definitely a solid choice, even a solid start. Back to the egg, I will put in this Hydra to A. This is the upgrade. I wouldn't say upgraded version of the egg, but if you can hold the egg down for 2 waves and it not break, it gives you a Hydra, and then you kill the Hydra and it spawns even more little Hydras. But if the egg breaks, it will still spawn a Hydra. It will just be a way worse version of it. Now back to steeds, like kind of how I just talked about with Sky Queen. I gotta put steed and the upgraded version of it as well into S tier. I think it is one of the best valued units in the game, because if she can't give mana to anybody, she's still increasing her attack speed. So she is definitely one of the best fighters as far as value in the game and what she can do to increase some of your carries or um, anybody, just one of the best for sure. I cannot ever not. It's hard for me to not take a steed because they're that good. Now we will do, I would say, my other second favorite unit, which is Serpent and Deep Coiler, which I just lost but these guys are so good, you just have to place them right. So make sure you place them all the way at the very, very front of your lane and place the rest of your team halfway or further back, because what these guys are going to do when the wave starts, they go underground and they wait for a few seconds and they come up. So if you're having problems with being sent hermits, lizards, cannons, drakes, whatever, place these guys up there, let them just rip apart their backline send, and just really, the value is so good there, and especially if you have a Deep Coiler for wave 10, Deep Coiler does so much damage in general with each attack, and definitely, as a solid boss killer for something like wave 10 is very much worth it. Oh, Aqua Spirit, while it has Arcane Defense, which is the best in the game, obviously, and Magic is obviously also the best attack. So Magic and Arcane, which, is 2 of these, which I haven't really talked about too much this video. I usually do. Magic, best attack in the game. Arcane is the best defense in the game. It's just how it is. Having Arcane defense is decent, but as a tier 2 and AoE, Aqua Spirit itself is not that great. Rogue Wave I'll give to B, but he's much more dependent upon if you have ability damaging units for your team. You don't always, or even if you do, it's not necessarily a whole lot to warrant choosing the Rogue Wave over Fire Elemental. And a Fire Elemental, I'll give the nod to A for sure. Being able to... AoE is not always the most consistent in this game for sure, but his bouncing and fire, especially early game, is just so good. And if they are sending you some backline units, being able to bounce and possibly eventually kill the backline unit due to bouncing is a solid choice. So we're going to go Veteran here, which is the upgraded version of the Pee-wee. I'll give Veteran, honestly, the nod to B. So this is Pee-wee's upgraded to Veteran. I think it's solid for the value, and I think being able to, if you have a little bit of money that you kind of want or need to spend but don't have enough to buy a unit or an upgrade or something, being able to boost either of these 2 units to spend a little bit is a solid choice, and having Arcane Defense for a tier 1 is a solid choice in itself. Another one of my favorite units that I have to double S tier is Lord of Death and Hades. So they just switched him. Now your dragons do not heal on kill. They instead give Hades or Lord of Death more mana. So it's essentially, he's just going to be spawning more dragons, and I've seen that. Like I already felt like he spawned a ton of dragons, but now this man spawns even more, which is insane to me. So definitely magic and arcane defense, high amount of damage, spawnable units, so then you don't have to really worry too much. So let's see. So this is the upgraded Chain Fist that you see down there. I can't really warrant giving it to B. It's a solid tier 1 kind of, but it's AoE for a tier 1 is just not good, which is why I really don't enjoy Mask. And if I could find the other version of the Mask, I'd put it out. But my eyes deceive me. Here we go. We'll go this way. So this is Mask, the upgraded version, False Maiden. Not much better. And AoE, again, for tier 1 is just not that great. And Hellraiser definitely bumps it up even further, so being able to have another upgrade instead of just one for a unit is nice. And Hellraiser definitely dishes out a lot more damage, especially if you can get an APS or a Dark Mage or something to increase its attack speed. It can definitely be a solid tier 1 carry, especially early game, but I've never been a huge fan of Mask. I know a lot of people are, but not for me. Tempest, I've never enjoyed either. It's just, to me, there's so many other better units around that cost, and even around if you need Pierce, that are just, Tempest has never been my favorite, and Leviathan is a little bit better, of course, because it gives flying units, you know, more attack speed and damage, which is great. But honestly, which they did just switch, and they made Elite Archer flying now as well, which I think does definitely help Leviathan Tempest choices. But honestly, there's just not a lot of flying units that are that great. I think the most expensive one is now Elite Archer that they just did. I guess you could say Radiant Halo and Arc of Justice, but that's definitely much more of a boss killer than it is anything else. But still not a bad choice, obviously. But everybody else is pretty low tier flying units, you know, like Sky Queen and stuff, so Violet would probably be your best choice. But it is what it is. Oh, let's see. Alright, the upgraded version of Looter, for its value and being able to go on the treasure hunt, I'll give it to B. While a lot of people would probably put him in A or S tier because he can treasure hunt, I can't do that, mostly just because you're essentially losing value. Now, while I don't think he might be necessarily the difference in you holding the wave or not, but you know, it's just kind of a matter of choice at that point, if you think you can hold or if the Mythium is worth it. Windhawk in itself is a decent choice. It's good on a lot of early game waves for sure, and for the value it's great. Violet I definitely have to put in A, definitely a solid upgrade, lots of damage output for sure, especially if you got it mixed with like a Steed, so it's just gaining much more mana so it can ult many more times. It's a fantastic choice for sure. Definitely, I enjoy playing it. And, you know, if you're a Leviathan fan, I'm sure you use Violet plenty. Angler, tier 2, always somehow gets attacked first, I swear. Not too fantastic, but what you want to do with him obviously is gain as much mana as you choose or full stack it to then make your bounty hunter insane, which is great, and then you keep waiting for the bounty hunter to get full stacks, and then you get a kingpin with full stacks, and that is definitely an S tier unit, especially if you have it surrounded by a butcher or APS or some kind of help to even further increase him. But kingpin full stack is definitely one of the best units in the game. Sometimes it is just hard to get him to full stacks, and you have to kind of take the L to not have him full stacks, or you just kind of never really get there. But if you can, especially early game, get these stacks and get these upgrades early, Kingpin is definitely one of the best in the game, in my opinion, for sure. Regular bazooka tier 2, I have to put in D. I just can't stand the man. I really can't. Pyro, which is one of the upgraded versions of bazooka, I'll definitely give to A. Definitely a huge start. He's going to clear like the first 4 waves essentially by himself, no problem really. Maybe a little bit of help, but not a whole lot. After that, he definitely falls off, but he's definitely a solid starting unit. Good amount of AoE. And I'll give Zeus, honestly, the nod to A as well. Definitely a solid backline DPS unit for not a huge amount of value. And not a whole lot of mana, so he can ult pretty quick, and that's even without, implementing steeds or APS or anything. So, bazooka itself, trash. Its upgrades, very good. So Poliwag is right here. Seraphine and Devilfish, I think, are worth the value, but I have always been a hater on Poliwag, never enjoyed it. Always feel like it's the cause of my leaks, to be honest. The upgraded versions have definitely surprised me more often than not that they can hold, especially for the value, but tier 1 unit upgrades are not too amazing. Ranger, I think Ranger is probably just C, might be B, but definitely not a bad tier 2 start. And its upgrade, honestly, I'd have to give Daphne probably to S tier. Being able to mark whoever she's attacking, especially if it's a boss, and it taking so much more damage is great. She does a shit ton of damage also because of the mark, and minimum just very much worth the value of her cost, which is 125 upgrade, and then obviously the 55 to buy the Ranger to upgrade her. So we'll go with the Bone Warrior. Actually, we'll go with this Adam. That's a Proton, and then it's an Adam. Adam, for its value, is honestly B tier unit for sure. $90 essentially to get this, and it just gets better and better the longer the fight goes. And being pure and immaterial, it does a solid amount of damage and defense every single wave, no matter what. So that's nice. There's definitely a bunch of units that you can use, like Steed or even Leviathan or things, to just make it even better. So for a tier 1 and the upgraded version, it's definitely solid. So back to the Bone Warrior. Fire Archer I've always kind of enjoyed. It's definitely a little bit of help if you need a boss killer and don't really have one, or you only have one but you're not really trusting it. $65 for an upgrade for a Fire Archer. I've always kind of enjoyed him. He's always been decent for me. And being able to have a little bit of lifesteal is still nice, especially for a tier 1. So the value is definitely there for him. Bone Crusher, I would say, is definitely minimum A tier, if not S. He's a little bit more expensive, $95 for his upgrade, but he's definitely the tank version of the Bone Warrior. Definitely a solid start to your game. And I've always enjoyed him, and lifesteal on him as well, naturally, so that's a solid choice. And then Dark Mage, I have to put an S. Essentially $95, so $80 for the upgrade and $15 to buy the Bone Warrior in itself, but $95 to have a magic damage unit that increases attack speed of your highest attack speed unit already, a lot, and build it with some steeds or something, get it so it keeps spamming more, and a little bit of lifesteal as well. Obviously it doesn't have a whole lot of health, so if it gets back to the Dark Mage, you're probably leaking, period, unless it's like early game, but still, that's definitely value in itself. Definitely a solid upgraded choice for sure. What else can I see and find? We'll just go Radiant Halo. I'll put in B. Solid boss killing unit, and the fact that it's pure and immaterial and flying is great as well, but it's, as far as like against waves itself and not boss, it's not that great. I'll give Arc of Justice the nod to A as well, mostly just because it's pure and immaterial as well and flying. Just lots of things you can do with that stuff. And again, just even more insane boss killer or just high health units or sins. But aside from that, against waves itself, neither of them are super fantastic. Yozora, I definitely have to give the nod to A for sure. She's definitely just one of the best units in the game, especially to start. And her upgraded version obviously is even better with more health and being able to have this 25%, I believe, chance to dodge every attack from anything and coming at her is awesome. And having even more health and do more damage is great, and being able to do pure damage as well is another just fantastic thing. And she does AoE at the same time, so just overall worth the value, worth the upgrade. The only reason why she's not an A is because I do feel like she kind of falls off a little bit, so you have to find that balance of keeping her in and not upgrading her, and then finding when you should upgrade her, because she does kind of fall off a little bit because so many units are attacking her. So definitely finding that right time to get her upgraded so then she stays insanely consistent is great. Antler, solid 200 gold tank choice for sure. And its upgraded version, White Mane, I have to give the nod to S, being able to shield up to 6 other units, including himself as well, is a great defensive AoE choice for sure. Definitely worth the money. And if that's a tank right there for you. And the only other person that can tank possibly harder than Antler is, we'll give it to the Sand Badger and Iron Scales. Also because they have arcane defense, so that's your biggest and best arcane defender tank in the entire game for sure. So always a solid choice. Banana Bunk, I think I'm just going to kind of give the same. I've never been insanely impressed with Bunk, and it's like a midway. It's not a frontline tank, it's a backline tank, but not like very backline. It just kind of walks up, like the range of it is small, so it's still technically kind of a frontline tank, but not so much. But the biggest thing with them is that anything that's attacking the Banana Bunk takes damage automatically, so definitely a solid tier 6 choice. But if you need like frontline tanks, it's not necessarily the best choice. Oh, what else do we have that I can see both of? Nikomata, honestly, I'm going to give it the nod to A at this point. So it's a tier 2 unit, but there is no upgraded version. What you do is feed it fish, and each fish costs 30 gold. Once it gets to 7, it also, if it gets a kill, it will gain health by being the last hit on the kill, like it killing the unit. And being Arcane Defender, that's great. But I've always liked having Nico on my team, because if I'm sitting there with a weird amount of gold where I can't really push a worker and don't really want to build, you know, a low cost fighter, I can just feed it a fish and I'm getting value for it and increasing it, obviously. It's definitely just a solid choice, especially early game, like those first 7, 8 waves. It's a monster for sure for a tier 2. Honeyflower, I'll give the nod to B. It's a pretty solid AoE, especially to start, but after the first 3 waves, especially if you don't have anything with it, it falls off so hard. Now, Deathcap, I'll give the nod to A for sure, but you definitely do not want these units attacked first. Early game doesn't really matter so much. But Deathcap, if you can keep alive, the fact that it does magic damage is great, and the AoE of that, but it's never a whole lot. AoE in this game, again, is just kind of scary to build your entire team around. If you obviously you're more than likely going to have at least one AoE unit on your team every single game, but to have it be your carry is a scary choice. Wild Shroom, I'll give to B. The biggest reason why it's not higher, yes, it has arcane defense, but it starts the round with half health, which you're like, oh, that sucks, but not so much. If it doesn't get attacked first, it's great because it will keep gaining health. And if you have units like Pilgrim or Sea Dragon, who's not on here, healing it, especially if it's not being attacked, it scales so nicely, and it obviously regens its health over time, so you're just sitting there gaining health, especially if it's not being attacked. And then the canopy, I'll definitely give. Honestly, I'm going to give the nod to S. You know, if you have any sort of healing, whether it's Butcher, Lifesteal, Pilgrim down here, or something that heals it, like Sea Dragon as well, Wild Shroom Canopy is a solid defensive tanky unit for the value of $95 and $180 for the upgrade. So since we're talking about Pilgrim, I'll give the nod. Honestly, I've never liked Shefton. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I know a lot of you probably think it's S tier unit, and that's fine. I can't really argue against that for sure. But the fact that it doesn't heal anymore and just heals whoever's in the front line, and if you haven't built your team around that, it can definitely mess your team up quite a bit. I've never been a fan. I get it, it's definitely a good choice, but you know, not for me. How's that? That's my personal choice of where they should both be. Gargoyle tier 2, I think, is probably going to be the only one naturally that's in B because of Magic and Arcane for 40 gold is huge. Always been one of my favorite, and Green Devil for the value is definitely worth it. Again with Magic and Arcane, and being 120 for the upgrade, so 160 total, is definitely worth the value and a pretty solid tank, especially early game, for sure. Berserker. Berserker is difficult. So I think I'm gonna have to put Berserker in B, but I will give Fatalizer an S tier. So what Berserker does is the more it attacks a unit, the more damage it does to that unit. Again, one of the best boss killers in the game, I'll give him that. But if he gets targeted early and dies, then the value is just not there. And that's the same with Fatalizer, he does the same. But for him to be worth the value and successful, he has to scale and has to keep attacking that unit and not die. And that is not always a viable choice. So, it is what it is. Oh, let's do Warg. I would say Warg is probably, as far as tier 3 units, one of the worst in itself. The value has honestly never been there for me. It's not that great, but his upgraded versions are some of the best in the game, in my opinion. Alpha Male, I'll give an A, but you have to be careful because if you build expensive units around Alpha Male, he gets worse, which kind of sucks. So he's definitely a nice choice for a split, and to have some weaker units around him just holding it down because he's tanky and definitely good. But all he can do is essentially lose value, so that's scary. Lioness, though, I will give to S. It's less expensive, and the scaling you can do with the Lioness is fantastic. The more expensive units that you build around it, which again, up to 6 in the area, he just gains more attack and more defense. So he essentially has not unlimited scaling, but he's just going to get better. And for the value, it's definitely worth it. Definitely one of my favorite units to have on my team to be able to build around. Nightmare is kind of like Berserker, except less health, and he does do a lot of damage, and he doesn't scale. He does an amount of damage. The attack speed and damage is high, but the health is not, so definitely do not target. Thank you for the support, Ania. But he's just inconsistent for me. Doppelganger, I definitely is much more health involved than Nightmare, and the attack speed is scary, and especially if you have a butcher around him. But I guess it's more of why he's not an S is because Nightmare is not necessarily the best, so you obviously have to build Nightmare to get the Doppelganger. But never been like you really for Doppelganger and or Nightmare to be successful, you basically have to have it in a Butcher Lifesteal aura. That's basically what it comes down to. Like I'm not even. That's just what it is. MPS. Or this is APS, sorry. APS. Up to 6 units for extra attack speed is fantastic. Does an okay amount of damage, but more of obviously it's aura buff than anything. Decent. The MPS does a lot more damage and still obviously increases up to 6 units attack speed as well, even further because of the upgrade. But overall, it's just aura. That's what it's about. Just essentially aura. So, Holy Avenger, honestly, the more I have played with and against, I've been kind of unimpressed. Sovereign, obviously, the upgraded version is still good. And now the changes with this new patch, they gain more mana, but they gain less health per kill. So, lets you pop off more, but has the ability to die faster. So, is it better or worse? I don't really know. But as far as being a fan of Holy, I've always been right in the middle and never impressed, but never really unimpressed. But, you know, we'll see. We'll continue to watch him. I don't know why there's 2 Fire Lords, but for a tier 6, he's always not been one of my favorites. Even though he's magic attack, which is great, I would take Lord of Death over Fire Lord any day as far as tier 6 magic attack. But Phoenix definitely S tier. If you have a Phoenix on 15, almost by itself that thing is going to clear, I swear. It's very, very solid magic attack and good amount of health. So definitely a solid choice, but never been impressed with Firelord and himself. Upgraded, yes. Mudman, I'm dropping him down to C. He's just awful, man. He just There are so many better tanks that are even like around the same. Like I'll take a Green Devil over a Mudman any day. I'll take a Butcher over a Mudman any day. I'll take almost a Bone Crusher over Mudman any day because I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten buffed up for all this time. Um, Golem, I'll give the nod to A because he has so much health. And these guys have a lot of health, but they do not attack like at all. And they're fortified defense, which is the worst in the game, so it's not good. And everybody's gonna say, oh, you have to get good with hardening him. That's not really, you can't even necessarily say that because you never know when your enemy is gonna sin. Not really. So, and if you harden and you mess up, then that next wave, especially if they then send the next wave, you're screwed because he's worse. So, no. Mudman and Golem, trash. Priestess, they just keep nerfing her. I think I have to drop her to B. She's still a solid unit, Magic and Arcane, but they just keep nerfing her. And it's warranted because she is that good. Azaria, I will still keep an S because she has so much health, and being able to gain that health back depending on how much she's missing is insane. And again, with magic attack and arcane defense, solid choice, especially for the value. Gate Guard, they have buffed. I think I have to keep the regular one in B, but I'll give the Harbinger to A. So now what the Gate Guard Hellhounds do is instead of losing health, they just essentially don't lose health, which is nice. Now they did nerf Gate Guard and Harbinger themselves, which they have a little bit of health, but now that your doggos don't degenerate over time, it's nice to have them being able to be spawned. Much like Lord of Death and Hades dragons, they don't lose health over time either anymore, but they don't gain health from the kill, but they instead mana reave, which I don't remember if Gate Guard's dogs mana reave now, but either way, it was a nice buff for them. I can definitely feel the difference of their spawns staying alive, and I'm not worried about them just kind of dying naturally or not being able to help. So definitely a nice buff for them. Even though they lost a little bit of health for themselves as a unit, it's not a huge deal because you use them to spawn. So Buzz right here, the upgraded version is Consort right here. Consort I'll definitely give to B. It's much worth the value, and when it dies, it poisons. Lets out some poison on one of the units. So it's definitely a solid tier 1 upgrade and choice. Golden Buckler. I'll give to C, but the upgraded version, the Royal Guard, I almost want to put it in A because I have actually been slowly impressed with it. I don't really run it a lot, but I've kind of been not necessarily forced to running it recently, but a little bit, and I've been thoroughly impressed, honestly, with it. Minimum, it's definitely worth the value. And it says it takes less damage from ranged units, but I've never really felt like it does. So minimum, put this at like B plus for sure, for a tier 2 unit in my opinion. Soul Gates, I think I'm just going to double put in A. I've never been a huge fan or super impressed with what they can do. But being able to spawn some pretty decent units out, if you have a decent team in itself, then it's definitely a good choice. Disciple, I'll put an A. I think it's much worth the value. Solid boss killer. And then if you upgrade it to Starcaller, she actually gives mana regen, increased mana regen to, again, up to 6 people in her aura. So if you're running a mana team, Disciple Starcaller is definitely who you need to increase it, and Starcaller gets so much more health and damage as well. It's definitely a solid unit choice for sure. Eternal Wanderer I'll give to B, and then Samurai Soul to A. Basically they die and then they come back to life and they attack faster, which is great, but sometimes that's not always the best. And they have fortified defense, which isn't great either, so it's just kind of, they're good because they come back alive and they come back alive even better, but over time it's just kind of, they've lessened on me. Infiltrator I'll give to B, and Orchid, honestly, I'm going to give to S. Usually I'd put her in A, or him, I'm not really sure to be honest. But the value of Orchid is so good, and again, if you have a little bit of money, being able to buy these shurikens, the shurikens do so much damage for no reason, honestly. They're so good for 5 gold, and then 1 gold for these. Like, they're very much worth it, and worth the value of 200 for the upgrade and 80 to buy. Magic attack too, so that's even increased further. A solid mid-tier choice. I have been more and more impressed the more I upgrade and play Infiltrator into Orchid, for sure. Elite Archer I'll give to B, and then the nod to A for sure for Trinity. Unfortunately, as much as I do like Elite Archer and Trinity Archer, I don't get the chance to play them enough. There's always units that I would rather choose than them, or units that will, in my opinion, better help my team, or that I would just rather have. But every time that I do play them, I do feel like I should play them more, and I want to, and they are solid for sure. High amount of damage, but a little bit of AoE, which kind of sucks, but definitely a solid choice. Millennium, I'll go ahead and give A, and then Doomsday I'll give to S because it's so much damage for a tier 6 also. But honestly, that's just really all it is. It's just a high amount of damage. Grarl himself is not the best, so he's definitely a B tier. But then Ocean Templaire and King Claw are definitely some A tier upgrades for sure, and you can do either one. And Ocean Templaire does do an aura of magic defense with everybody around his aura, so that's great. But never super impressed with taking Grarl or either of the upgrades. That's just me. I know that he is good. I know that he is valuable, especially because you can do, frontline tank or, area magic defense, but never been my forte. So let me know what you guys think, where you guys would place everybody, what you guys think about the game, what you guys think about all the new units that aren't on here, the new campaign, where you guys would place some of your favorite or least favorite units. And we will see you guys in the next one. Probably in a few more months we'll do another Legion tier list again. So we will see you then.